North Korea fired a missile toward Japan just days after the U.S. and Japan urged the country to end its missile program. North Korea's test, which happened early Sunday local time, appears to have been a mid-range Musadan missile, similar to what you're seeing on the screen. The rocket reportedly traveled about 300 miles before crashing into the Sea of Japan. Experts told CNN the test was likely a technical failure, but they added these missile launches also have political motivations. Broadly speaking, the experts say the launches could be timed to send a message to other countries as well as help North Korean leader Kim Jong-un gain support back home. South Korean analysts were expecting some kind of military provocation. Kim Jong-un's late father's birthday is on the 16th, and in 2 weeks, the U.S. and South Korea are set to begin their largest ever joint military exercises. The test came as U.S. President Donald Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe met in Florida. In a joint statement, Abe called the test absolutely intolerable. Trump kept his response to one sentence.
The United States of America stands behind Japan, its great ally, 100%.
The Trump administration is said to be undergoing a complete review of existing policies on North Korea.
There is plans to beef up security around the Eiffel Tower. City Hall announced Thursday, February 9th, the security perimeter will be extended into public gardens to the east and west of the landmark. A temporary security fence that's been up since last year's European Soccer Championships will also be replaced with a permanent structure to the north and south. What that structure will look like is still to be determined. Jean-Francois Martins, the deputy mayor in charge of tourism, tells the New York Times, quote, "It could be glass. It could also be wrought iron." Initial reports suggested it would be a fence made of bulletproof glass. Some Parisians cringed at the thought of their beloved tower turning into a stronghold, though. Plans are still being finalized, but increased security is only part of a $320 million makeover the Iron Lady's due to receive over the next 15 years. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Matt Paul.
Another blizzard is set to hit the Northeast starting Sunday. According to Reuters, the icy blast is expected to dump 8 to 16 inches of snow along the U.S. coast between New York and Maine. The weather stands to disrupt travel, which will probably result in major airline delays and cancellations, as well as slow economic activity in much of New England. Coastal New England may experience flooding, and winds are expected to reach 50 miles per hour. This is the second storm this week after another blizzard dropped a foot of snow in the Northeast on Tuesday.
President Donald Trump's proposed project at the U.S.-Mexico border could reportedly cost over $21 billion. That's the price tag Reuters reported Thursday. It comes from a leaked U.S. Department of Homeland Security report. The number is much higher than what Trump and other Republican leaders have promised.
$12 to $15 billion. So we intend to address the wall issue ourselves.
It's going to cost $10 billion, maybe 12, depending.
But lower than the $30 to $40 billion some independent groups have estimated. And the leaked estimate doesn't account for big land masses like mountains, which could drive the cost up even further. Homeland Security is reportedly banking on having money from Congress for a border barrier by April or May and plans to begin building it in September. That timeline roughly fits Trump's recent executive order on border security. The order, signed last month, directs the DHS secretary to immediately identify and allocate resources needed to plan and construct a wall. The border project was one of Trump's campaign promises, and while he originally promised Mexico would pay for it, he's since said Congress will cover the costs up front and that Mexico will pay taxpayers back. But Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto and 2 former presidents of Mexico have emphasized the country will not pay for it.
We are not going to pay any single cent for such a stupid wall.
I'm not going to pay for that wall.
As of Friday afternoon, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security had not officially commented on the report. Reuters says the document will likely be presented to the head of the department in the coming days.
For generations, life on Isle de Jean-Charles has remained unchanged. The fertile waters of Louisiana's coastline provide a way of life people here cherish, but this is a community that's slowly being taken back by the sea. Just one flood-prone road connects residents to the mainland, and as sea levels rise and land is lost, life is becoming harder.
Well, this is where we live for the past 7 years, on and off.
Violet Handen Parfait was forced into this trailer after the family home was lost to storms, and she's now desperate for help.
My kids should not be sleeping right here. They should have their own rooms. you know? And it's hard.
The government has granted $48 million to move this entire community, but progress is slow. Many realize that Al-Dor Jean-Charles is living on borrowed time, but the prospect of losing tribal lands and culture is wrenching.
I have all my cousins here. I'm related to everybody over here. You know, and over there, okay, if they keep us together, we'll be okay. You know, but some people don't want to leave here. But that's their choice. I mean, I don't have no choice. I got to do this for my grandkids.
If the people here are the first climate change refugees in the United States, it seems almost certain they won't be the last. Louisiana's losing around 75 square kilometers of land every year, and as we've seen here, it affects the poorest communities. And environmentalists say this is just the start of things to come.
For every mile of coastal wetlands we have, it reduces storm surge by a foot.
Daryl Malik Wiley blames much of the land loss on oil exploration, but says global climate change is being ignored.
It's something that for too long the government, both federal and states, have not addressed the issue, so now it's right in their face. And they need to do something about it, and they haven't figured out what they're going to do about it.
If what's happening here then is a test case, it's a sobering one. The Biloxi, Chitimacha, Choctaw tribe now face an uncertain future, and one environmentalists say could affect millions across the globe. Andy Gallagher, Al Jazeera, Al-Dor Jean-Charles, Louisiana.
Move on now to the breaking news this morning. A powerful earthquake hitting the Philippines in the middle of the night. There are deaths and injuries and frantic rescue efforts happening as we speak, and ABC's Bob Woodruff is in the region. Bob.
Well, good morning, Dan. Yeah, this morning these rescuers are now combing through the rubble from Friday's devastating earthquake. A 6.5 in magnitude, the quake just struck in the Surigao del Norte province, which is about 430 miles southeast of Manila, striking in the middle of the night and centered near several densely populated urban areas. The powerful quake just tore through the homes, leveled commercial buildings and gas stations, and sent chunks of concrete from apartments just crashing down onto cars below. Much of the city is still without power, and response teams from the national government are rushing more than 8,000 emergency food packs to families in the harder to reach areas. Now, survivors from the city are now making their way back to damaged homes and businesses. Now, experts are saying that the quake was likely triggered by the Philippines' fault, part of that highly active zone known as the Ring of Fire, which makes seismic activity a somewhat routine part of life for countries along its edges. This morning, with visibly shattered roadways and massive cracks running through the airport runways, engineers in several major port cities are assessing the damage and preparing for possible aftershocks. Paula?
So much damage there. All right. Bob Woodruff, thanks for...
New Zealand beach once again littered with the corpses of pilot whales.
The whales stranding here overnight. The hundreds of volunteers digging in at the site of a mass stranding.
Going round the dorsal fin, so not... This time, though, in near record numbers.
This is the floated about half of the survivors.
We've just been sitting out.
That will carry on into tomorrow.
The State Water Board's revised regulations passed last May eased off on restricting water use by local water agencies and instead asked them to show that they could survive a 3-year drought. State rules on landscape watering after a rain event and gutter flooding remained. The board today had to consider whether or not to extend the emergency drought regulations in light of a banner rain and snow year. Its staff said extending the rules would do no harm in light of the fickle weather in the past.
One wet year does not necessarily mean that we're out of the woods, and with climate change, we have to be conserving and making our conservation a way of life.
But many local water agencies worried about credibility.
We need to reserve emergency regulations for true emergencies, or our customers may not heed the call for conservation.
Calaveras County is dealing with emergency flooding, not a drought, and it can't sell that to customers.
I can't say that in our professional opinion that there is a reason to continue the drought emergency based on the water conditions in our area and in much of the state.
But in the end, the board agreed with UC Davis environmental professor Frank Lowe's.
I think the most logical thing from my perspective is to maintain the emergency regulations to keep at the forefront that conversation about the importance of water use.
The State Water Board is understandably gun-shy after nearly 5 years of drought, and they are concerned about whether all this rain and flooding is just a one-year-and-done occurrence. In Sacramento, Lonnie Wong, Fox 40 News.
In the heart of Afghanistan's capital, the river flows red. It was a visual statement made by the civil society group Afghanistan 1400 to protest the massive loss of innocent lives in the war being waged in Afghanistan.
We thought a lot about how to symbolize the depth of the tragedy that's going on in Afghanistan with the loss of civilians, and we thought of several ways of doing it. And nothing really could visualize it better than a flood of blood.
Afghanistan's civilian casualties in 2016 were the highest yet recorded by the United Nations mission in the country. Nearly 11,500 people were killed or wounded, an estimated one-third were children. But as one onlooker pointed out, these statistics can't gauge the damage these losses have on the families left behind.
The people who are being killed in these attacks are breadwinners, the people who come out of their homes to bring food to their families and children.
While Kabul River ran red to signify this bloodshed for only a brief time, the act was televised live on national television around the country, in some way to remind Afghans not to become indifferent to this rising number of civilian casualties.
And what we want to do by this symbolic act is to bring the attention back to the cost of war and say, look, we notice it at an individual level. We are all victims of this war, but let's have a collective realization, a collective awakening about this and start talking about how can we end it.
Will the Trump administration in the United States make a difference? Afghans hope so. But this war has outlasted 2 US presidents already. Now that a third has taken office, Afghanistan's rising body count suggests that ending this 16-year conflict may require much more than extra boots on the ground. Catherine James, CGTN, Kabul.
North Korea has fired an unidentified type of ballistic missile. That from South Korea's Yonhap news agency, which quotes the country's military. It comes after the US said last month that it had seen indications that Pyongyang could be preparing for a new test launch. And in his New Year's speech, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said his country was close to testing an intercontinental ballistic missile. If confirmed, this could be seen as a test of Donald Trump's administration.
They tried to force their way into Baghdad's green zone with deadly consequences. Shots and tear gas were fired as anti-corruption demonstrators sought to reach the ultra-secure compound housing government offices and embassies. Police say at least 7 people were killed, 2 members of the security forces and 5 demonstrators. Over 200 injuries were reported. We demand a change of government. We want patriotic people to replace them and start rebuilding Iraq. The elections were manipulated and a sham. Every 4 years we have the same people. We want honest people. The protesters, mainly supporters of prominent Shiite cleric Moqtada al-Sadr, want electoral reforms ahead of a provincial vote in September. Rampant corruption comes as Iraq battles to defeat ISIL in a US-backed campaign discussed in Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi's first phone call with President Trump. Baghdad said Abadi also asked Trump to lift the ban on people from Iraq traveling to the US, although American courts have now suspended those restrictions.
Calling its ruling a judicial usurpation of power, a White House official on Sunday launched a blistering attack on the federal appeals court that blocked President Donald Trump's executive order on immigration. The Trump administration has faced multiple legal setbacks to its travel ban. Rather than go through lengthy court challenges, the Republican president has said he may issue a new order. On the Fox News Sunday program, White House advisor Stephen Miller said, "The president's powers here are beyond question." Criticizing the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruling blocking the order, he said, "The 9th Circuit has a long history of being overturned, and the 9th Circuit has a long history of overreaching. We don't have judicial supremacy in this country."
For the first time in decades, archaeologists say they have found another cave they believe once held Dead Sea Scrolls. A team of scientists was excavating a cave near the northwestern shore of the Dead Sea when they discovered pretty much everything except a completed scroll. The long list of uncovered items includes smashed jars, a piece of blank parchment, cloth used to wrap scrolls, and a leather strap that would have bound a scroll together. Archaeologists say the cave was most likely looted, considering they found a pair of pickaxe heads from the 1950s. As one of the team members told the Washington Post, "Thank God they took only the scrolls. They left behind all the evidence that the scrolls were there." Until now, scientists thought only 11 caves had contained Dead Sea Scrolls, which are historically, religiously, and linguistically important. The first scrolls were discovered in the late 1940s. It's unclear who wrote them, but some scholars believe a Jewish sect known as the Essenes may have been responsible. Archaeologists say they will continue excavating in the desert northwest of the Dead Sea in the hopes of finding more ancient treasures.
Edward Snowden is weighing in on reports that Russia might send him back to the US as a gift. Snowden worked for years in the US intelligence community. In 2013, he leaked classified NSA files that showed the US government's mass surveillance programs. The feds charged him with espionage and theft of government property. Since then, he's been holed up in Russia. Anonymous US intelligence officials told NBC News recent Russian talks have centered around handing the whistleblower over to work up favor with President Donald Trump. The current US president isn't Snowden's biggest fan. He's called him a traitor and a, quote, spy who should be executed. But in response to the reports, Snowden argued a handover would actually prove he's not a spy because, quote, no country trades away spies. The Justice Department said it would welcome an exchange since Snowden still faces charges in the States. But a spokesperson for Russian President Vladimir Putin denounced the claims as nonsense. Snowden's ACLU lawyer said he hasn't heard anything about the Russian reports either.